G'day, guys. Another Sunday. Good to see you all. It's a bit of a mad rush for me this morning, trying to get things sorted and yeah. Anyway, into it. G'day, T1. Yes, I saw you on Skies. Sort of, you got it wrong last night. Yes, late one for me. But yeah, sort of, it's the thing with weekends, going late to bed, not a good thing. And it's a mad rush in the morning. I'm actually next week, I'm booked in for Pim's live stream. So I've got to go early on Saturday night. So yeah, I'll be getting up very early for that one. And yeah, so we've got a different theme. I will not introduce it at this stage until, you know, I'll let her do that part. So yeah, be another thing that I'll be doing a collaborative bit of work with her next week. So that'll be interesting. I've been enjoying doing stuff with Pim. Really nice lady, and we seem to click really nicely. So keep on doing it. Anyway, let's get on with today's show. G'day, Kitty. Good to see you. Raphael, good to see you, mate. I'll just cycle through a couple of these until we hit any questions or any comments. Yeah, it's just, I always have in the mornings a bit of a few issues when I'm trying to get, I nearly accidentally went into the Euro Live one, and then I'm going, oh, damn, you know, and realized that what I'd done went into the wrong one. Oh, God. So I nearly started the other one accidentally. Oh, good to see you, mate. Good to see you. Bowbird's here. T2. G'day, Lucky. I've noticed everybody's become a doctor recently. Well, if Greta can, so can the rest of us. Is that it? Nice one, guys. Nice one. Yes. I like the comedy. Yes. That means if you guys are doctors, I must be a professor. A professor of bullshit. Hello, Honest. Yes, beautiful Honest. Good to see you. G'day, Christina. That was yesterday. Yeah, that was actually yesterday. I had these big, thick steaks. I mean, really thick. I actually had to go to a butcher's because you just can't get them in stores or supermarkets or whatever else. So I actually went to a butcher to get really thick, big steaks. Because last week, as you guys know, I was celebrating my birthday. So I had a barbecue with a mate of mine, and after we had our big walk, and we had these big, thick steaks, and also had some really nice Italian sausages which had fennel in them. Really nice. You can actually smell the actual fennel. It really got the, so the herb combination was really nice for the actual sausages, and they're all done traditionally with the intestine. So the wrapping is the intestine rather than this sort of collagen product that they produce, and they throw in a whole lot of other fillers and stuff like that, which is the general garbage out there. So it was really, those sausages were really nice. Really enjoyed them. Some brie and even some pickled cucumbers that my mate had. I did partake in 2 of those. Look, today it's only going to be for 2.5 hours. It's going to be shorter. I do have the later live stream, which is the Eurasian one. They'll go for longer because Dad's cooking for me as well. So, celebrating on the weekend, basically my birthday type thing, and people are cooking for me and stuff like that. So, yeah. So that will be fun. I think he's making some really thick pork chops from what he's told me, but I'm not sure. Well, if it's not, it'll be a surprise. Probably was a Freudian slip. Can't hide from you guys. But you know me. I'll tell you whatever I do. So, as I said, don't do, science is science. And the indiscretions we all do, let's be honest about it, we all do, is not optimal. And we know that. We're not, at least we're not lying to each other. Yes, thank you. It is, different. I decided to try a different intro, different style. I may actually, because I did all those sort of intros and a few others. So I said I might as well start using those and just try a few different intros each week for a while, and then just go back to the classic, the stock standard one. Jarrett may be in today. So yes, it's not a milk run. It's a sort of a family and friends and other things. So he may drop in, he said, later on in the day if he gets a chance, but may not. So you've got me for the majority of the next 2.5 hours. So poor bastards. That's all I can say. It's not going to be, it's just going to be full on Harry. Anyway, let's move on. God almighty. Nice intro for the 50 plus. Is that it? Is that what you're saying? G'day, Luke. It's good to see you, Lukey. Yes, it is morning. It is 11:45 a.m. in the morning. G'day, Ian. Good to see you, mate. Okay. I need to ask this question, oxalate question again, Harry. You suggested I would remind you, Dr. Yeah, look, I actually did see part of it. I can't remember now because it was more than, or was it a bit of a week ago or whatever. But generally speaking, what he was saying, it wasn't really controversial. I sort of agreed with him with a lot of the stuff that he was saying. Sort of that people make out that all their symptoms are all related to oxalates, which they aren't. There are similar symptoms that have nothing to do with oxalate dumping. He didn't really elaborate enough for me. But I mean, when you get oxalate dumping, you will get this foamy type. If you've got severe oxalate dumping, you'll see that your kidneys will hurt and it will be very foamy, this type, the fluids that are coming out. Because sometimes people can have like, let's say they've got gallbladder issues, they've got issues of that sort, and they can potentially have like pain in their part of their colon, and it feels like it's coming or emanating because of the nerve endings that are in that area, that it's coming from the kidneys, but it's not. It's actually coming from the colon. So and people, just misdiagnose things constantly. So there is that thing, and he's right that a lot of people make out that oxalate, that everything that ails people is all due to oxalate toxicity or oxalate, but no, it's not. And if you've still got those sort of pains, if you eat high oxalate foods for a period of time, it stops the dumping. And if you've been taking citric acid and stuff like that, and then you continue having some of these sort of unusual pains or whatever, then it's not the oxalate, So it's basically something else which may give you similar sensations or feelings or stuff like that. So, and oxalates do play a role. They are bound as a means of the body getting rid of things. But where I sort of differ, where he sort of said, oh, well, people don't need to really be too concerned about oxalates to the same degree that everything's oxalates. I say, well, you don't need those foods that are high in oxalate. That's where I disagree with him. You don't need those foods that are high in oxalate. And yes, you could probably mitigate them, like a lot of people on a sort of a Mediterranean type diet that use a lot of dairy to chelate a lot of the oxalate and take it out, like spinach pies or things of that sort, which has got a lot of dairy products to chelate those. But at the same time, is it the optimal type of food that you want to be putting in you? No, so these are important elements to take into consideration. So a lot of people make a big issues about these sort of things. So you've got to be careful about what people are saying. So I didn't agree entirely with some of the premise on that issue. And for some people, oxalate toxicity can be a real problem, but it's not as people are making out that it's everything. You really have to diagnose these sort of things properly. You just can't just jump to the first conclusion. So it is, but he could have been a bit more tactful the way he explained it, and explained the sort of the chelating factors that are in certain dietary practices when you do eat these sort of foods that can, he wasn't very clear, sort of just mentioned, he was sort of trying to be more critique or clickbaity on the people that actually say that everything's, and I agree with him on that, that no, it isn't everything is an oxalate issue. It's like, I find that some people in the carnivore community make out that thiamine or this or that nutrient is everything in the thing, which is just over the top. The body is a much more complex interaction of a number of different vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients and lifestyle factors and whatever else. So, there's a lot of interplay with a lot of things. So it's not, sometimes you have to really, you can't give somebody a proper answer. And that's why I've said to people, send me an email, explain your circumstances, give me some details. Like, I know that, no different than a doctor would ask you for symptoms and lifestyle factors and stuff like that to diagnose certain things. You just can't, consider that everything is something. And there are sort of obscure things as well that I've come across. And I usually say to people, go and do this, and this test, just so we can exclude those obscure sort of symptoms that do exist in certain pathology and certain genetic diseases, because a lot of people don't know their genetic status. That's why I sort of promote this sort of genomics approach as well, to understand the vulnerabilities or the susceptibilities you've got, so you can sort of slightly modify your diet in a way to reduce the sort of effects. It's like the video that I did about methylation on MTHFR. Those people, those 9% in Northern Europe and 12% in Southern Europe that have that specific gene, which unfortunately I do as well, to actually improve the actual functioning of the actual enzyme that is involved in converting homocysteine back to methionine, riboflavin. You just have to up your riboflavin to much higher levels, and it fixes the problem completely. You don't have to basically supplement more folate or more B12 or create imbalances between B12 and, unnatural imbalances between that. You just basically have to use that. And I showed the clinical study that actually showed quite clearly that dose dependent, you increase it, it fixes the issue. So, and that's why I say you've got to be very careful about reductionist sort of views, because we've got the MDs that do all their what are called pharmaceutical reductionism. Oh, you've got this symptom, we'll give you that drug, and create a whole lot of other dysregulation. Then we'll give you a pile of other drugs going forward to things. It's the same thing with the naturopaths. Oh, you've got that, we'll give you high doses of this supplement or that supplement or this or that. It can create a lot of imbalances as well. As I've said to people, try and get it from the food. That is what you should focus on trying to get. You only use supplements as a short-term measure to correct a deficiency. It's not a lifestyle to be popping pills, whether they are supplemental pills from your naturopath or drugs from your MD. Humans did not have a naturopath or an MD popping them, giving them pills. Go back 100 years or more, wasn't the case. People got it from the food. So we need to go back to the food, and we need to cut out a lot of the processed, nutritionally poor foods that we still cheat and sometimes over cheat with. And we know we all do it. So, mine's ice cream, as you know. You need to be honest with yourself on what your indiscretions are as well, and lessen them, and put the foods that have the nutrient density that's required. But look, generally speaking, that's my sort of take on his view, that it was a bit narrow in some regards, and in some regards it was fair, it was good. But I think that at the end of the day, some of these plants with some of the oxalates are not the devil incarnate. I'd have to agree with him on that, but they're not optimal either. And some people have been consuming them in much vaster, greater amounts, like I was doing, bacon and eggs with spinach in my paleo days every single bloody morning. And I was consuming, massive amount of spinach with no dairy. Not a good thing. And I ended up with kidney stones. So, and a whole lot of other issues. So basically, you got to be very, very careful. And so the protocol that I would employ would be high dose, quite a bit of citric acid for quite a bit of time to basically deal with this. I mean, I don't use citric acid anymore. I haven't, because I'm over those days, so, and it was basically the last sort of dumping where I got foamy urine. The last dumping was early in the this year, and that was the last one. And I haven't had an incident since then, luckily. So I think I'm over it completely now. Now I'm basically back to a certain level, a more natural level of oxalate that the body produces to bind and get rid of certain things. And I think I'm fine. But some people may require citric acid for a bit longer. They may have more indiscretions, which is still compounding their problem. So it's going to be different between different people. But obviously, we shouldn't prescribe everything to oxalates. That's a danger as well, because that's you end up misdiagnosing yourself. And on that, he was right, but not on some of the other stuff. So Ian's asking, do you get better workout with push-ups and crunches, overweights? Look, it depends what your goals are. I usually say to people, if you're over 50, don't go too hard. You want lighter weights, and you just want to do it have a like 15-minute sessions, take it easy, or even, if you're starting 5-minute sessions, stop, take a break, then another 5-minute sessions, take a break, then another 5-minute. It's not a marathon. You just may have to do a few more additional sessions in terms of that. But, it depends on what your age is, in that sort of stuff. But, I would say that I would basically do some push-ups and some crunches between weightlifting, and that's what I would do. So I would combine the two, but I wouldn't do a lot. Don't go crazy, guys. Don't go crazy. I mean, if you're, because I've checked the statistics on the people that follow this channel, and most of you are middle-aged. Okay, there's nothing worse than a middle-aged person that goes crazy and ends up with injuries, and then is unable to do a lot of things for a very long time. So, get a bit of walking in there. Do some push-ups, but don't. You're not a 25-year-old athlete. Do some crunches, but crunches really, I mean, they have their benefit, but also there's a lot of us middle-aged people also sit a lot, and we've been sitting a lot for a very long time, so our glutes may not be very good, and so we may get pain in our legs and stuff like that, and we go, what is it? And sometimes it actually originates from your glutes. So get a rolling pin, put it on the floor, and actually roll your ass on it, basically, to help work those muscles as well. And you will notice once you do that you get less pain in your legs as well. Because I was getting the same thing. I was, by sitting at work. I mean, now that we've got a new desk, which is a stand-up desk, which is great. I just press the button, it comes up. I can actually stand and work or sit when I get too tired, which is fantastic. So I'm back at work as well since this last week, because they actually stopped work on one of the other floors and moved into our floor and actually completed it much faster. So a few items that, oh God, are not really done up to scratch, and some things are not working. They rushed them, and so we've had to contact them to come back in and sort them out. So yeah, not happy. But anyway, but I'm back there and I'm making use of this sort of equipment. So I would say for middle-aged people, you need to do a number of things that move all the body, all the muscle groups and all that. Don't stick to doing, like just push-ups or just crunches or, it'd actually be even better to have certain things which, like a tire or a ball, where you pick it up and throw it over. Like you've probably seen, Sean Baker actually grabbing these balls, but you don't want the lighter ones, because he's built like a brick shit house. He's a strong bloke, he's been an athlete all his life, and most of us aren't, so we don't want to be doing this. But lighter things which we can lift and throw over our backs, or or push stuff or pull. You don't have to overexert yourself. Just move those different muscle groups. Get the different muscles working throughout your whole body, because the biggest problem is, we need, fluids to move through those. We need basically those electrical, those fire, the neuron, the electrical wiring of our bodies to fire in a certain way. So, because you're not going to get a healthy nervous system unless, you work these different parts of the body, and you don't have to overwork them, guys. It's just basically moving, jumping up and down, doing some jumping jacks. You don't have to do a lot. I do, for instance, each time I take a break, I do about 25. That's it. Sometimes I do 50, but I usually stick to about 25. Things like these sort of things really help. So it's just basically moving the body, getting fluids to move around, getting your lymphatic system to function better. Movement helps your lymphatic system work better as well. So it's very important that, as middle age, as we move on, to be able to move all our body. But even for younger people, because even younger people are doing too many, things that actually are stiffening them or creating injuries and stuff like that. It's not good. We weren't meant to basically sit there and do isolation type exercises continuously. That's not natural. It's really unnatural. So, yeah, okay, if you want to be a bodybuilder, fine. But, God, I don't think most people that come to this, want to be bodybuilders or, be Conan the Barbarian or something like that. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. No. The majority of us just want good health, our bodies to work properly, our muscle skeletal structure to work properly. And for that, you need good nutrition. There's no way around it. It's just good nutrition. All the studies you look at, you need good levels, have good levels of sodium, good levels of phosphorus, good levels of protein are the key factors, in the body. And that basically means a more animal-based diet is healthier for you in the long run, combining it with reasonable exercise and movements and stuff like that. A lot of glute issues I find people in their 50s tend to have, because we've been sitting down for a long time and not exercising that part of the body. We no longer do the physical type work where you sort of crouch down and lift things and stuff like that to work those sort of muscle groups. We don't do that. So if you're not doing that, get a rolling pin, work those muscles, because you're not working them normally. In the past, we worked in agriculture, we worked in factories, we had to, basically crouch down, do all these sort of things, lift things, move them and stuff like that. We did all these natural movements. We don't do them in an office environment or other things that we do nowadays. And so those muscles tend to be neglected. Everybody focuses on lifting weights and, working the legs by walking or running or whatever. And we forget about these ones. And what happens is you end up working the other muscles and get them out of whack. So your glute muscles tend to be weaker, and these other ones tend to be stronger. They actually realign you, even your pelvis and all that sort of there's this sort of realignment and pressure points that are actually created. And people wonder, I'm doing all this exercise. Why am I feeling pain? Because you're probably not exercising your glutes. So you need to look at all these facets, look at all the muscle groups of your body. And at our age, we should be looking at moving things, not overexerting, but moving these different muscle groups and making sure that we're covering all these different muscle groups. That helps far more. So don't concentrate on sort of very narrow reductionists, very narrow type of activities. Some of these things may work for a young bloke, that's in their 20s or 19 or whatever. But I tell you, in our age bracket, we need to do all body movements and not overdo it either. So, because, there's the wear and tear. The older you get, the less mitochondrial density you've got, the less capacity to repair you've got. So, you need to basically keep that in mind. The damage you cause today, you may not be able to repair tomorrow. G'day, Dr. Trouble. Yes. Gone from simple trouble to Dr. Trouble. God help us. Mad Professor of Tassie. Hey, Mad Professor. The Mad Tassie Devil Professor. You mean? Yep. I have my mad moments now and then. Well spotted, T2. Do you have any parsley to throw away? To go along those, do I have any parsley to throw away? Oh God! Look, my dad does grow parsley, and he enjoys it. Look, I'm not really into. I've never really been a heavy parsley. I used to use it in the past when I made my omelets and stuff like that, I did enjoy a bit parsley in omelets, like cooked. Raw, not really. Never have, but cooked. But I do use some herbs and, like basil and other herbs and spices that give flavour. And, they've got some of their, if you use a small amount, they've got a bit of hormetic effect, which can be beneficial. But I would, I don't consume large amounts of plants anymore. It's more in the herbs and spices to give flavour to things, because I love flavouring foods. But that's me. Other people can eat them a bit more bland. I can't. So, especially some of the seafood, I really like to put different flavours into them. Yeah. What do you think of flour that is made from crickets? It's fine. It's very high in protein. And if you're, I wouldn't waste my money for the average person. But let's say you're a bodybuilder, a young bloke bodybuilder, and you really want to basically get some high quality protein in, and you want to make certain types of foods or treats or whatever. Yeah, it's a good source for younger people as well. If you've got young kids and stuff like that, to make the floury like hamburgers, and make use cricket flour to make the bun perfect. No, none of the oxalates that you will get in some of the non-gluten grains or other related issues or whatever. The chelating factors that reduce nutrition going in. So here you're going to be getting no anti-nutrients, and you're going to be getting high quality, protein. A bit of fat. Crickets do not have a lot of fat. They're very lean. It's mainly protein. So it's a very protein rich. You can combine, things like butter in there to soften it up. So you would actually put much more like a butter or cream to combine with that flour in order to get the bun to be more softer in that regard. So you'd have to play around with combining eggs, but you don't want to put too many eggs, because eggs are a very strong binder. You want some binding, so you want an egg, but you want to put more dairy sort of creams and dairy fats in there to make it softer. So you end up with a bun that is softer, and which the kids will enjoy, stuff like that. So, yeah, sort of focus on that sort of side. Look, even some adults will, don't get me wrong. I would, G'day, Harold. Good to see you, mate. I suspect that's Jared, the Milk Run Kid. That's what we should call him, the Milk Run Kid. Yeah. Did I listen to, so Maths Faster is asking me, did I listen to Saladino's talk with Brad Marshall? No. Salad Boy needs a good heap of slap. Okay. I can't comment on things that I haven't heard. Can you give me some details on what he said? Okay, further down. He was using the N of 1 to prove with his PUFA theory, and is he okay, yep. Well, he's still on that, I know the PUFA nonsense continues and continues and continues. The thing is, he'll go and say, 100 grams of pork and 100 grams of beef, you get half a gram of PUFA. So if you get a pork steak or a beef steak, you get half. It's just the ratios are slightly different, but it's, you can have 400 grams as an example, which would be 3.5, 7, 14 ounces of meat. And you would get about 2 grams, which would be half what is considered the unsafe, by these people. So, and you could probably add to 3 grams and consume something like more than a pound of beef or more than a pound of pork. But that's sort of the quantity, but then completely ignores that there's 1.5 grams per 100 or 3.5 ounces. They're in lamb, and nobody makes an issue of lamb. So you've got far more PUFA, 1.5 grams. It's one of the highest. I mean, chicken's the highest with 3, double that. But as I pointed out, I don't. N of 1 is just nonsense, because basically it's not the information that he's providing is not clinical. The information that he's providing is observational in nature, so it's not real science. It's just observation and opinion. So, which is the lowest form of science, or research science. So it's irrelevant. And when you've got people, societies like the Okinawans that live longer than the American population, or the Inuit population, the Sardinians, another population, and they consume a very high pork-based diet. And then you've got their confounder, that old geezer that outlived his father, who died at 40, his mother, and this was actually a case study. So this was a properly conducted clinical case study, okay, in a nursing home, but it was a proper, doctors measured all these things, they did the proper clinical stuff. This is not an N of 1. This is a proper case study on somebody who's an extreme consumer of eggs, 25 eggs on average a day, which is 17.5 grams, okay? So that's more than 4-fold increase in PUFA. And eggs are primarily omega-6. Even the grass-fed ones are primarily omega-6. So when you have this vast quantity and you've got no health issues and all these other populations, there is a fundamental difference between an omega-6 coming from a plant and omega-6 coming from an animal source. The way it actually incorporates into the bilayers is completely different. And that's really important to understand, that the way in animal foods, these fatty acids are incorporated are way more stable. You really have to make them rancid, you really have to keep them out in the sun, put a steak out in the sun for a number of hours, and you will notice some rancidity, a bit of a smell. It'll go off. But until it actually goes off and it's stable, but that's because a number of things have happened. You've put it out in the sun, the antioxidants like the vitamin E that's in there has degraded. All these other things have degraded. The tissue fibers have degraded, which means they've exposed now the PUFA to oxygen molecules. And so you've completely radically changed it. This is what happens in industrial seed oils and a lot of, things like seeds that are not refrigerated. So you get a bag of, of almonds, which have been collected 2 or 3 years ago or a year ago. They're in storage and they're sold in bags. The PUFA in those have degraded. And so they're going to be a problem. And then you go to the next level, which is the sort of the industrial seed oils and stuff like that, which are just basically absolute poison. They go through a refining system, a refinery, an oil refinery, no different than petrochemical oils. if you go outside the factory, it looks exactly the same because similar technology is used to refine it. And all these solvents are used in all sorts of things. By the time you get to the end product, that's, they've made sure they got rid of all their rancid smells because they've put like certain types of similar to perfume type things to take out all that smell and all that, deodorize it as they call it. Once they've done all that sort of stuff, you get a product that is highly rancid, highly oxidized, and very high in deuterium as well, which is very damaging to your nanomotors because it just floods the whole nanomotors with too much deuterium. And so that's where the problem lies, that these foods are very toxic to the body. The next worst are basically a lot of the nuts that a lot of people on keto do, on paleo do, on vegans and vegetarians do, because a lot of them are basically not fresh nuts or stuff like that from the tree, seasonal. They're basically in storage because they're a commodity. So they're put in storage, they're sealed, but, they're still degrading. So, and that's the problem. They, these fats are incorporated not in these sort of, bilayers, these phospholipid type bilayers, which basically can hold these components in a much more stable form. And that's the difference between an animal food that has a greater stability and integrity and a non-animal food. And it depends what the animal food and what the plant food and what they've done to it over time. So there's a lot of factors at play. He doesn't take any of this into consideration or pays lip service to it. And all the studies that we're looking at are rat studies. And we know rats cannot convert linoleic acid to arachidonic acid. They're very poor converters. So basically they end up, even if you give them healthy LA, they can't convert most of it and get overloaded. And that's not a good thing either. Humans, on the other hand, are very good converters. They vary. There are some people that are not as good converters, but the majority of us have some, and we always prioritize omega-6s. Our body will always prioritize the conversion of omega-6s to arachidonic acid. So, an arachidonic acid plays repair. It's involved in the repair mechanisms. More than half of the PUFA in your brain is arachidonic acid. So, and it's incorporated throughout every single cell because it plays a reparative role. So there's not an issue there because we can convert a lot of that. Some of us are very high converters like myself, and a lot of, Okinawans, and they tend to have these genes much more, not all of them, but a large proportion, especially the centenarians. And so you will get less LA staying in the system anyway. Once you've eaten an animal-based food, you will convert that largely. And since you're not basically creating any competition at the conversion end of things, because you're basically, consuming your DHA and EPA from animal food, so you don't need to do any conversion of omega-3s, not an issue. You just basically have to deal with the omega-6s, and your body knows how to do it. Not any. The problem is, as I've pointed out, all these discrepancies in the literature and all these paradoxes, which basically means when you've got a paradox, it means your initial hypothesis is a zero, is shit. And so that's why basically I've put out the challenge to these people and said, come and argue with me. All they've got is rat studies. It's just one fucking rat study after another fucking rat study, which doesn't interest me. And most of the chow in the rat study is full of these toxic oils. So that's where the poof is coming from. So, it doesn't tell me anything about good animal nutrition. It's a smoke and mirrors sort of thing. He's jumped on that bandwagon, and now, he doesn't want to basically, and then he's got the other side where he consumes a lot of honey, and honey is very high, as I pointed out, in deuterium. It's 7 times more glycating than basically glucose, pure glucose. So why would you want to put that shit in your body when seasonally you only had access to it seasonally, and very rare and very small amounts? It was a treat that a tribal person may have had, not all year round, every day of the week. That's not a good idea. That's one point. The other point that he completely ignores is, I actually showed a rat study where they just gave the rat pure bacon. I've shown that study, and you guys have seen it in one of my, I think it was the one that I actually did with Bart or whatever, that I actually showed that. One of the chats. Those who haven't seen it, I'll put a timestamp after this so people can go and check it out. And I made that point. I showed that basically here was they gave a toxic substance that can cause cancer to the rats, and the rats that basically got just the bacon, the pork that, Paul, Mr. Salad Boy, bags continuously, pork, and we're not talking about high quality bacon here now. We're talking about supermarket bacon, shit bacon, low quality bacon given to a rat in an experiment. And you know what? It was protective from cancer. Oh, we got another paradox. No, we don't have a paradox. That is real food, and the seed oil is an industrial piece of shit, toxic shit. That's the difference. And when people play these sort of idiotic games, because it's all, you know what they're doing? They're basically saying, oh, I'm an enlightened carnivore, go for your grass-fed, PC shit meat, oh, you're poor. Oh, bad luck, because that's what really, an elitist sort of approach where, go for this sort of stuff. The reality is that even poor quality meat is going to be superior to the other rancid shit out there that most other people eat. So, let's be quite clear about that. And I'm willing to, argue with these people and basically have a debate whenever they like. I'm available on this issue because basically they don't have science. And as I pointed out, remember when Bart was on one of my live streams back a couple of weeks ago, and I actually put these good points and made it quite clear. Even Bart said, you're right. He put his hands up, and he's come around about a bit, and he has less issues with animal-based poo for now as well, because he was sort of on the fence a bit on some of this sort of stuff, but he's pulled away and he's realised, it's nothing there, nothing to see, guys. It's just all smoke and mirrors by these guys. And let alone, I've made it quite clear that Salad Boy has become more closer to people like Ray Pete, and the Strong Girls, the same thing. They've jumped into that camp, that nonsensical camp. Oh, you need carbohydrates. No, you fucking don't need. You've seen me growing my hair thick as and whatever else. You need good nutrition. You need biotin. It's in eggs and liver and stuff like that. You need good nutrition. You need also to have a good genomics approach. So you say, well, oh, Harry, you've got poor methylation because you've got these genetics. So you need more choline. So I'm one of those people that needs more choline, they need more riboflavin, they need certain things, nutrients. So I look at how to mix and match. And usually when I look back, I go, okay, my ancestors consumed a lot of raw milk, and I've put that in because that gives me a lot of riboflavin, So a glass of milk will give me practically, 16 ounces, like a big glass of milk will give me all my riboflavin for the day. Then if I have some basically meat, which is also a good source of riboflavin, I'll get more than enough, double or triple the amount. It fixes the problem, because that's what the clinical study showed. Dose dependent. It fulfills the Bradford Hill criteria in terms of, inference, of proof, of causation, of, and that's the sort of the approach, and and people like Paul Mason have spoken about this issue as well, and they agree with my sort of sentiment that there is no issue with PUFA in animals. I think Ken Berry is another person that's pretty much on that on my side. So is Sean Baker. It's only Paul and his nonsensical stuff about, he's trying to make a bit of a name for himself around PUFA, and you know where all this shit comes from? This pro-sugar, pro-honey, and and anti-PUFA sentiment comes from Ray Pete, from that degenerate guy that's falling apart. He won't even front up anymore, because let alone whenever you listen to him, he doesn't make any sense. He's deteriorating, basically. This guy's a mess. And this is the guy that the Strong Sisters and, Salad Boy and a number of others have jumped on and said, oh, you need these things. God almighty. God help us from the nonsensical people out there. Yes, the 7 late cups. Oh, yeah, I know. He's actually, look, he does occasionally, because, look, he built his career on this sort of salad shit. That's what he did. We all know that. He sells a lot of supplements that are geared around it. So he can't extricate himself completely, but now lately he's been saying that if you've got a gut issue, cut out all the fibrous foods, go more carnivore. So he's shifting, but in degrees, in small degrees. It's a bit like, the Heart Foundation, all these, or some of the organizations where they're shifting. They know they're in the wrong. Scientifically, they've been proven wrong, and now they are shifting slowly so they don't lose face. It's a face-saving measure. You know me. I mean, you heard me last time when I was, I said to myself, well, about the Inuit, where I made a mistake. I thought that it was one thing, and then I realized it was a deuterium issue. But, I had a wrong hypothesis at the time, but I owned up to it. I said, yep, I had that opinion. It was wrong. With better science and better understanding, a deeper understanding of, the genetics and the interaction and the environment that these people were in, I understand that it's nothing to do with what I thought initially, why they lost that capacity to, go ketotic. They needed more fat to basically displace the additional deuterium they were getting in their environment, and they didn't have the solar radiation. But, I hadn't thought about that side of things. But then when I realized that I'd basically gone down the wrong rabbit hole, I walked back up to the top of that rabbit hole and went down another one, and basically told you guys and owned up to it. And that's what a true scientist does. A true empiricist basically says that the data does not match the hypothesis. The hypothesis needs to be jettisoned. It's wrong. And you get rid of it. And you either can say two things. Either I don't have something to replace it with, and so I don't know, or I've come up with something better. And you explain what that better thing is. So what is he on now? Salad Boy's on a whole powered protein diet with a side of pills. Okay. God almighty. God help us. Yeah. It's to avoid the nasty fats, so you can supplement the good fats. And God almighty, these people, as if for the last 350,000 years, Homo sapiens were basically saying, I'm not going to have this mammoth. I need to reduce my PUFA intake. This mammoth has got too much. What a load of garbage. God, they would have been laughed out of the tribe. You're welcome. Oops. Hello. Any thoughts of claiming possible iron overload, heavy metal diet long-term with copper iron imbalances? Well, the quickest way to actually get rid of, if let's say you've got hemochromatosis and it's an issue, there's two ways of quickly getting rid of it. One, you can go in and give blood. That's one way of eliminating that issue. Two, and you do a good service to the community. Second thing you can do is basically you can take turmeric, curry powder in large amounts, and it will basically give you an iron deficiency. So you can take it in a certain amount to bring down your iron levels. So there's a lot of different strategies you can use. Chelators of metals, like heavy metals, there are different things, selenium, or in the form of selenide. So a number of foods that have got high selenium, you can take a supplement. Don't go over 500 micrograms, obviously, because that can be potentially toxic, potentially. So stick to below that. That can be a good chelator as long as you're in a non-inflammatory state. That means you're not eating shit like sugar and all that, because that can it can stick to the selenide and actually destabilize it, and you can actually stop the chelating factors. So that's one part. The other thing is, activated charcoal and stuff like that. There's a couple of things to get rid of things. But if you're eating real foods, you should have a good copper, iron, and copper zinc balance. So usually if people have too little copper, it can create issues, because you need copper for iron. You don't need a lot, but you still need some for iron metabolism. So it's a question of, sometimes you need to pull away from all the supplements you're throwing in there, because you're creating all these, and then just go back to real food and try and, with a real food, just rebalance yourself. And usually it does work. It does happen, So that's a real important thing. And there are foods there are some seafoods like mussels that have got more copper. There is things like calamari squid, which is another good source. Gelatin is extremely high in copper, so you could use a gelatin supplement to combine in a broth or in a bit of meat. So you could just use a bit of gelatin and just glaze your meat or whatever, and add a bit of copper. So there are different ways of doing it. Don't go crazy. Stick to the levels that are required. Don't, the 1:8 ratio type thing. Don't go crazy on that. But as long as you're getting close to the RDAs and all that, you should be basically pretty fine, as long as you're not doing, heavy supplementation and stuff like that. That's what usually causes a lot of these imbalances, when people just supplement like mad. You don't need to. It's like the idiotic things. Oh, you need to take massive amounts of these, minerals. No, you fucking don't. There is a certain excretion rate that actually happens for all minerals in your body. It's a video that I want to do that I haven't done, but I will do, to explain the excretion rate and what you really need to get in the diet. And most of us, if we're on a proper carnivore diet, usually get all these minerals that we need to replenish the excretion rate. The only time you may need to supplement a bit, if you're doing, like longer fasts and stuff like that, where you may deplete yourself slightly. So there are cases in that regard. So I hope that's sort of helped out a bit. But there's plenty of studies, and I think I've actually shown some studies, what was it, last week or the week before? I can't remember now, that I actually showed from the subcontinent, India, where they were using high doses, where they were looking at populations that were very iron deficient, and they were the ones that were consuming a lot of curry powders, or they were using them in their foods very heavily, especially in the southern part of India, and they tend to be vegetarian, so they don't get enough anyway, compounding the chelating factor of turmeric. Not a good thing. But it can have its uses as a short-term, way of, because it could be a case. I'll give you an example. If you had a pre-existing condition and you don't have hemochromatosis, and you try and go and give blood, they will not take blood from you. They'll say, well, you've got underlying issues, so you're a risk. So you could use as a short-term thing, curry powders to bring down the levels, and then go check yourself with your GP and stuff like that. Make sure that those things, and then sort of slide back to getting rid of these curry powders and slide back to eating proper foods that will give you the proper balance and all that sort of stuff. But I will be doing something in regards to this, because I realize these electrolyte issues and all this sort of stuff has become it's so confusing out there. And also when it comes to things like I've had, like osteoporosis and muscle atrophy and stuff like that. So I need to do on something to explain these properly with real science that has been done that shows exactly how these things actually work in a clinical setting. This is not, guessing. This is not observational stuff. Oh, we have this population. Oh, we think that they've been doing this, but this is basically you're locked in a clinic and they give you specific things through an IV, and they can take stuff out and put stuff back, and they can notice what happens. That is gold plated. The problem is it was done many years back, because they can't do it now because it never get past an ethics committee. But it really explains what things work and what things don't. And it gets rid of all the mystery and all the nonsense out there. It literally clarifies those points. So that is one to expect this week. I have to do it, I know, because I get a lot of questions on it, and there's a lot and people are very confused. It just needs to be settled. I'm sick and tired of it myself. And it's probably, I need to make the time. I will do it. I will get it out of the way at some point. So I've taken the day off on Monday, so I'm going to do some content then. I've got some other work-related sort of stuff that I have to complete as well and email in, so I will do that as well in the morning. But in the afternoon, I will focus on doing some of this sort of stuff and getting it out there. So you've got something to base it on. You can say, well, here it is. Stop talking nonsense. And we can clear this up, because a lot of people out there are listening to nonsense. They are ending up causing themselves all sorts of problems. I've heard Stephanie Keto person, a number of other people, Sarah and many others that have basically have had issues with hypoglycemia, have issues with all sorts of things that have been happening to them. And these things need to be cleared up, because they're just becoming a bloody nuisance. G'day, Daniel. Yes, kettlebells. Oops. And I'm fucked, aren't I? Even if I do this, we hold that all three fingers for, the Trinity. That's how we do it anyway, the Orthodox. Yes. So just when you see the three fingers, it's basically and you do the slightly on an angle, because it actually creates like the X, which is the Greek thing for Christos, Christ. Anyway, let's move on. Cricket flour is way better of a filler than anything currently used. Yes. I'm not surprised, T2, that you would be really into the cricket stuff. Yes. But is this flour cricket? You know what I mean. Yeah, it's an Australian saying. This ain't cricket. Which means something completely different. Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. It is true. But I can add more. What's wrong with you, kitty? Isn't cricket flour high in... Actually, I don't know. Shinton. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I know that it has a number of minerals, that it combines in, and there is some sort of fibrous type structure that is constructed. And I've heard about it, but I don't know how much gets into the flour. No idea. If anybody knows, please let us know. Um, yeah, but yeah, good point. I didn't think of that at all. Yeah. But then again, it should be good for minerals. So that's the other positive side. So you'd end up with a soft bun with the dairy products, the butters and stuff like that, combining that with those sort of fibrous type, that shell structure, which is also high in minerals. So it'd be probably a good source of minerals as well for young kids and for adults. Yeah, maybe something I should look into and get a bit of more information about. Yeah, it's something that it hasn't really interested me, but I don't want to complicate my life. Just stick to the run of the mill animal foods. I know some people like to. It's like a bit of the keto attitude, where keto bars and keto this and keto that, and people don't want to give up their buns and want to have still. And I don't really need that. For me, it's unimportant. But I can understand if you've got young kids and you want to keep them on a carnivore diet, and their friends are having, burgers. Maybe this is a better option for your kids. That's the sort of way I see it as an adult. Really, it's just a treat. In that regard, whole cockroaches have been found inside flour, cricket flour. Have they now? Oh, more protein. What's wrong with you, mate? Actually, in parts of Asia, they actually consume, and I've actually consumed in Thailand something that looked like a cockroach anyway, a very large one anyway. Really sort of, there was a couple of things that an old girlfriend of mine, Cindy, she was half Chinese, half Thai, and she was really into all these exotic foods, let's put it that way. So yeah, she got me into consuming some of those things. Oh, let's say interesting, some of them. Sounds tasty. It'd be right. Uh, God almighty. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, Bird Brain would go for a roach diet. Yeah, he'd love that. Washed down with roach milk. Oh, God almighty. Well, at least it's not almond milk. Or even worse, soy milk. Show me the studies. And what's this about? I can't remember what you were asking. Nah, you're asking roaches there. Zinc. Nah. Where were you? Back here somewhere. Now, we've gone past that point. So I don't know what studies you're talking about. So if you want, place it at the bottom again. Let me know which ones you're talking about. Okay. Hi, Harry. When I transitioned from keto to carnivore, I've put on a few extra kilos of fat. Any idea? Maybe I just need to eat less. Yeah, you may be eating too much protein, so you may be just a bit too much on the protein side. So that may be an issue. If you're basically, let's put it this way, if you're basically someone who is not doing a lot of physical work and stuff like that, and you're piling in the large amounts, you could basically be producing a bit more glucose, and basically, getting too many calories in. So, and end up engaging the Randall cycle. So, yep, potential. Just ease off on some of the stuff and see how you go. That would be the best thing. Look at basically at doing for your weight 1.76 basically times in terms of protein per kilo body weight. And if you do that and then just modulate the fat, because remember, we're not athletes to basically require something like 2 or 3 grams, which is fine if you're an athlete. I mean, some of the Samboral guys were getting up to 4 grams. So, and for males, it's less of an issue. For females, high protein is not advisable. I've been saying that for some time. So, but in that regard, I would say that you probably should look at 1.76. So let's say for somebody who's 70 kilos, that's about 123 grams of protein. So let's say you're just eating 1 meal a day as an example. This is just rough stuff like that. And I don't know why Wild Style, I don't know why you are getting continuously these being held up for whatever reason, because I've just checked. It shouldn't be an issue. What the bloody hell is that? I'm actually continually having to release you for whatever reason, which is quite annoying, but YouTube up to their skullduggery or whatever. Sorry about that. It's not me. It's YouTube. So just so you know. I actually, even myself recently, I found that I actually got unsubbed from a couple of different sites that I said, I haven't seen some material from those sites for some time. And then I checked, I realized I'd been unsubbed. So I was quite pissed off, and just recently, with the live stream chats, they've been reactivated again. Now they work again, crazy. And where before, remember, I complained about 3 or 4 times to YouTube, and eventually they got rid of. Now, when I create a live stream, the setting is unticked, so I have to manually tick it each time. Which is really annoying, because before I had it in my preferences, and it's been removed from my preference. When I try and put it back in my preferences, they remove it again, which is really damn annoying. So I have to go back every single time after a live stream and retick it so it will work. It's bloody crazy. It's driving me up the wall. They're not making life easy for us in that regard. Yeah. So what was I doing? Yeah. So just roughly, I'll do it in my head. That would be about 500 grams of meat, or 1.1, pound of meat, for somebody at 70 kilos. That's, you don't need massive amounts in that regard. So that could be an issue if you're piling down the steaks and eating too much. It's Sean Baker's doing a different thing. And if you've noticed, he's cut back on the protein side and increased the fat side, and he's becoming leaner. So don't fear the fat. Don't go too high on that. But sometimes there can be underlying mitochondrial issues. That's another issue that because I've got cases of people who have got mitochondrial damage, and they cannot oxidize fats very efficiently. And so what they do is they convert a lot of their protein to sugar. And increase the deuterium content of their mitochondria, which causes more damage to the capacity of the mitochondria to generate energy, which we need to repair, heal, and function. And so I use metabolic water to basically displace that. I've had one case, the lady that I've been dealing with was given 5 years of life. Well, what I've done with her is just recently, she told me that she's put on 3.5 kilos, half a stone, and she's starting to feel her breasts have, enlarged as well a bit, and she's put on a bit of weight. So the body was deteriorating, but now is increasing its energy production, so it's able to heal, repair, and build itself up again because she was emaciated. And she's coming back, which is great. It's starting to happen. So she was bitching and moaning about the sort of the discomfort she was feeling, she was feeling a bit of sensation in her breasts and stuff like that. And I said, well, it's just normal. You're healing. If you need to pain manage things, but she's on the mend. It's going to be slow because there's a lot of damage there, and we're still continuing with the protocol. And I haven't shifted to add some of the other elements in until she gets to a certain level of energy production before we can do the other parts of stage 2. So she's still in stage 1, which is transition of a couple of months still to go. So we're heading there. We're getting there. She's coming back from the brink. Pretty much the whole medical system wrote her off and gave her 5 years of life. And she was just going to be wasting away for the next 5 years until death. But no, she's coming back, which is great. I'm happy. It was actually the best news. All she could do is complain about, the feelings and sensations she was getting. She was happy about the weight gain, but some of the other stuff. And I said, it's all part of healing. It's just persevere. Sorry, life wasn't meant to be easy. Yes, but I suspect, Chris, I would say, cut back on the protein a bit, modulate your fat, see where it works. So do a bit of measures, take a few measures. Sometimes people are doing a lot of these like fat bombs and keto bombs and stuff like that, and adding far too much than what they should or what they're expending. And, at the end of the day, as I said, when the chylomicrons come in from your gut, they bring in the fats. They first go to the adipose tissue. They will drop some off. They will circulate and go around the rest of the body, So, and then they will be back to the liver to be re-exported as VLDL. And you may get more free fatty acid lipolysis that actually happens, and more fats that get released if there is less calories in the system, and the body will sense that and basically send the proper signaling to release more free fatty acid. So this is how the body's supposed to work. And this is how we went through like days where we didn't eat a lot, and then we just pigged out. We hit a mammoth and we just pigged out. And there are still some tribal societies. There's one tribal society in South America which eats every 3 days and only eats every 3 days. So they just drink water and stuff like that and whatever else through the other days. But every 3rd day is the only time they pig out completely. So they fast for 2 days, for 48 hours nearly, and then pig out. And so that is a cultural thing that they have. So, and it's probably for whatever reason, part of their life in that regard. But if you're eating every day, you need to basically, stay within a slight caloric deficit, and occasionally have a slight caloric, and that actually is a good thing, because slight caloric deficit you don't want for too long, and you do want a slight caloric increase to basically encourage the sort of increase in the amount of energy requirement. So it's really important to sort of play with that, because if you're in a continually deficit sort of state, and especially if you're doing indiscretions of any sorts, which we all do, that can be an issue, because then you can engage the Randall cycle and lose the protectiveness of being slightly calorically in a deficit in a keto state, which you basically just you make up the difference with free fatty acid. So that's a really important thing to consider. So it's about, learning to manage that, learning to manage it and how much energy you need based on the exercises you do on the different days. So you can vary things. I usually, depending on my exercise and all that, I do vary my intake of food in different ways. So yeah. And I definitely do a lot of weightlifting and stuff like that on an empty stomach, and sometimes even like long walks, because, and just recently, because I was working from home and I put on a few kilos because I was in the fucking fridge and having my ice cream and all that, and I sort of cut my ice cream back completely to just Saturday. That's it. And even my mate said, because I bumped into a guy that I hadn't seen for about 2 weeks, and he goes, "Oh, you've lost a bit of weight." I go, "Yep, just cut out the ice cream through the week," and it did the trick. So that was my major indiscretion, as you guys know, but I'm honest with you, and got rid of that, and pretty much, lost a couple of kilos. So it's not difficult, you don't have to go crazy, you don't. Extreme dieting or extreme sort of weight loss can be a problem. A health problem in itself can create issues. So you've got to be very careful. I'm sure Dr. Berry made a reference to Paul's honey consumption. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. Yeah. I think somebody actually told me about it. I haven't seen it myself. Yep. Repeat. G'day, Bo. Good to see you. We had a feather altercation. You were feathered or defeathered, as one would say. Look, whey is basically far more anabolic than even glucose, pure glucose. So it will actually raise insulin. It will spike insulin to double the level of pure glucose. So I've always said that whey should be used as so if you're a bodybuilder and you want it as like a real big anabolic boost, have some whey half an hour before doing really quite heavy reps. Do not have it after, because the biggest problem is you get a spike and then it drops, and it drops to a much lower level, and it means that basically if you don't get other protein substrates in there, you can become more catabolic. That means you can lose some tissue and some of the gains. So it's really important. And remember, things like casein, things like meat, eggs, or the meat and egg diet, the steak and egg diet, those sort of actually are much lower. And especially eggs, really good eggs and dairy combination. That the stuff that I think I've sent you as well, Luke, and a few others about the old bodybuilders' secrets, how they actually combined this formulation of a smoothie of eggs and also egg powders, and still that brand still exists. You can still get it. And by combining doing this combo, you could actually get muscle protein synthesis, not for the 4 hours you can get with the current supplements, but all the way out to 6 hours. Much longer period of muscle protein synthesis. So yeah, much better the old bodybuilder secrets. They got far better gains and less of this, because they didn't eat carbs. They avoided a lot of that because they knew they would. That's why all those old bodybuilders had those big muscles and really ripped, midsection, where all these guys nowadays, you actually notice them, they bulk up with all these freaking carbs, and then they never get rid of that little pungent bit in front They've got that little, protruding belly and stuff like that. And we're not talking about the sort of the roids issue, but just the general sort of things. Yeah, but do focus on basically as a pre-workout thing if you want to make more muscle gains. And the other thing is, Luke, you probably may, because I don't know whether you haven't done any genetic tests, but I've got genes that actually tend to actually be better for muscle building, and there are a lot of people that don't. And in terms of inhibiting myostatin, it's much harder. But I do want to do something on myostatin and myostatin inhibitors, and doing it the right way. That would take much. It's beyond this, but I will do it. It is one of the videos that I do want to do to explain the sort of things that you can do without putting your heart at risk, because certain things that some people do in terms of myostatin inhibition can cause issues with the heart. Now, there is one amino that you guys know that I really use a lot, which is taurine in high doses, and that can be protective of these sort of unusual growth characteristics within the heart. But there's a couple of other strategies as well. You'll have to wait for the video for that one. But yeah, it's something that I don't bother. I usually lift my weights without any food, without any supplements whatsoever. I'm not really into the big gains. I don't want to have this big, because my chest is quite, is big as it is. I don't want it actually much bigger. I know my partner wouldn't appreciate it. She's told me, so I've been told. So, she doesn't want me to bulk up, and basically I'm not going to, because that would piss her off. So it's not going to happen. But all I can say is that, if you do want to do that, there are the healthy and safe ways to do it, and then the slightly unhealthy and less safe ways to do it. So, yeah. Anyway, that is for a future video. Oops. Thank you, StreamYard. I just lost my spot. Okay, just found it. Everyone has left? No, I don't think so. We've got a few people busy reading the chats. We've got about 28 people at the moment, which is good. A few people sticking around, asking questions. Okay. You watched it, T2, because not only am I Bart's Amazonian bodyguard, but my space time. Okay, so he's been mischievous, has he? Yes, he is. T1 and T2 have been trolling me on other sites. I've put comments and they've been trolling me, deliberately trying to provoke me. Yes. Those two are a problem. Power bird. Hey, you got competition, mate. Okay. Yeah. So Bo's making her own ice cream, which is good. Yeah. Look, there are really. I did get myself an ice cream machine. I just need to read the manual and find out how it works, and start making some of my own. So I am looking into it to make some ice cream, because I need to make it, healthier with all this, because a lot of the stuff out there still got too much sugar and stuff like that. So, and I enjoy ice cream, but I need to find other ways. And I'm still not sure about the alcohols, Bo, because a lot of the alcohols have got, like, they cause certain signaling the body sort of perceives them as potential sugar coming in, and can create a bit of a mess up in the signaling. And the body's sort of transcripting enzymes and pushing certain things out that really can create a bit of instability and a bit of havoc, because it's expecting sugar to come in. So I'm still trying to sort of work out the best approach to sort of a bit of, with also the vanilla part, maybe go a bit lighter on that and maybe try something different in combination. Yeah, so I need to, I haven't looked into it enough, but I will at some stage, because I do want to shift away from the commercial stuff and to my own stuff, because that's what I really need to do, to be honest. Okay, that's fine. Harry, what do you know about glycome? Ivor Cummings had an interview with Dr. on the glycans and the possible disease making, and you can have mapped just like a DNA. Look, I haven't seen the actual video, and I wouldn't want to make a comment at this point. I'll take a look at it and see what their arguments were, and how they put them, and ask me next week, and I'll have an opinion on it. Okay. Anything that reduces your calories, you'll lose weight. A highly catabolic vegan diet, you can lose weight. A highly therapeutic keto diet, you can lose weight rapidly. Fasting, you can lose weight. There are a lot of different strategies you can lose weight. Cyanide, you can lose weight. So there's a lot of different. The question is healthy. What I suspect you want to know is how to lose weight in a healthy way. Well, a healthy way would be basically a more carnivorous diet. But for women, don't go too high on the protein. You ladies do not do well on a high protein diet. You basically need to be much lower. So your calories, if your total calories that are required, let's say 2,000, don't go above 25% of those calories in terms of protein. And if you're trying to lose weight, I would go to 20. And the reason for that is simple. You're going to be losing a lot of tissue, and you're going to be getting some of the protein recycled from the tissue. Much better. So you can come down to 20%, and the fat component can be basically about the half of your, around about 40%, and the rest, the other 40%, you get from your body. So that's one way of sort of calculating the sort of stuff. So you don't want to go too low fat. This sort of high protein, low fat, low sugar, and all that can create a lot of problems. It's especially in women, because you've got a much, your fat requirements are much higher than men to support your hormonal system. Depending on what your age is, you can also use a bit of boron supplementation to sort of balance the sort of the hormonal issues, especially if you've had hormonal issues. I don't know what your circumstances are, but drop me an email and let me know a bit about your background and all that, and then I could actually provide you with a bit better information in the way you could combine it. More about, must have been something else that I discussed and you found it interesting. You're welcome. She's a Tassie girl that recently subbed to me. You're in the UK from memory. Yeah, I hope your dad gets back as well. I know he's stranded up in Queensland, but I hope things sort of work out, or I don't know whether you can actually sail down the East Coast, or he could sail down the East Coast or something like that. I know a mate of mine who's a yachty who goes and does overseas regattas. He's been struggling to try and get from flying out to one destination to basically then go to another airport. So he's been going zigzagging around to be able to go through the different areas that allow him to get through. So it's just crazy stuff. So maybe it may be easier going to another state that you can get out of Queensland or across the border, and then from that state fly to another state or stuff like that. So yeah, it can be, yeah, you got to do a bit of research. Let's put it that way, to work out which way to be able to go, to be able to get back to a certain place. So yes, it can be a bit difficult. Okay. More important question is, what is the best diet for fat loss? Unless you're carrying around too much fat and muscle and trying to lose both, yeah, it depends. That's exactly right. It depends really what you're trying to do in that regard. So how you play with your macros will really depend on what you're trying to, what your goals are. So first set your goals and say, I would like this body composition. And then it's much easier to basically then create a custom, so yeah, if you do, when you do send me an email, just let me know what your current body composition is and what you're aiming to get to. That's much easier to basically determine. And when we're talking about body composition, we're talking about, some measurements and stuff like that. So I've got an idea of this sort of composition. So height, hip ratios, breast ratios, hip ratios, all these sort of things really help, because it tells me exactly where your body composition is, what you're aiming to get towards to, and then, and also the sort of foods you like, because trying to get you to eat things that you don't like is a waste of time. You're just going to go, I'm not going to keep to that, but you can keep to things that you like. And so we can incorporate certain things at a much smaller amount if they're going to be a problem in a larger amount. So you can customize things slightly in that regard, because at the end of the day, if you want to basically, you've got to work with the body and you've got to work with your lifestyle. Because if you can't work with your lifestyle, you're never going to stick to it. That's the biggest problem. A lot of people, it's the lifestyle gets in the way, and it becomes a real, pain to try and keep to. You've got to tie to your lifestyle very much. I hope that helps the explanation. Yes, more on the bird brains and of the world. For Dr. Bird. Dr. Bird. You mean Berg? God almighty. Yep, we'll move on. Don't get the repeat stuff. Seems very strange, constructed as detached from the evolutionary context. Orange juice stuff was a bit of a red flag. Exactly. This stuff does not exist. These people are basically pushing modern day foods that have never been around. I'll give you an example. Chris Walker, he's sort of sympathetic to some of the ideas of repeat, especially on the thyroid side and stuff like that. If you take a look around the world, it's people that are eating 70% carbohydrates, very high carbohydrates, low fat diets, that have got thyroid issues, are nutrient deficient. Your thyroid, it doesn't matter what diet you're on, you will have thyroid issues if you're nutrient deficient. If you're getting enough biotin, you're getting enough selenium, you're getting enough basically things like zinc and stuff like that, you're not going to have an issue. And there are whole lot of other things that can actually have an effect as well. But unfortunately, we have people out there pushing certain lines and not talking about the nutrients, but all that. But I remember Chris actually saying something really crazy. He said, "Oh, when bears come out, they are basically in a diabetic state, and the bear will basically go and actually consume sugar, and actually their diabetes will go away." He actually said this on one of his live streams, on one of his chat streams or chats that he had or whatever with some other guy. And he actually was saying this, and I'm going, in spring, there's only green stuff around and salmon coming up the river. There is no other stuff. And you can actually see them in videos in spring. You can see all these bears lining up as the salmon are coming up. What sugar is he talking about? It's complete and utter nonsense, you know? But, they just say this shit, "Oh, you can have orange juice." And I go, in what bloody world was there orange juice? It's only a recent phenomenon, it's a commodity. Concentrated orange juice is like in the US, in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That is where concentrated orange juice is traded on that exchange because it's a commodity. Because you can basically get rid of all the fiber and all that. You take an apple, put it in the fridge, bring it out, cut it up, and it just turns into mush because of the fiber. That's why they get rid of the fiber. They get rid of all their nutrients, and all they just keep is the sugar water, and they can store it for ages. I mean, God almighty, the sort of shit these people talk about is just ridiculous beyond a joke. He really loves you, doesn't he? It's all love till it all goes bad. God almighty. Dustin as well. No. This isn't Bart K's live stream. It's Harry Serpanos' live stream. So no Dusters here. You can come and go as you like, Ask your questions, go. You may have family issues or other things to deal with. Deal with those things. You can always come back and view this at another time. Prioritize your families, guys. Prioritize your families and your health and stuff like that. Another guy who originated the keto kids call fat bombs. Hundreds of YouTubers post videos on it, none having a clue, how to use them effectively, how much, why they were designed to begin with. Exactly. A lot of people don't realize why they were actually, they were there for specific people that actually had certain requirements for more fat, whether to support their endocrine system or whether they were doing a therapeutic type with a low protein, low mTOR type, therapeutic approach to keto. There were a whole lot of, people that had cancer or other issues. So they needed to basically get more fat in because fat is lower in deuterium. It depletes deuterium out of the actual mitochondria. It actually increases the capacity for oxidative phosphorylation within the mitochondria, which basically means if you've got enough energy, your body goes, okay, we don't need to use as much glycolysis. It starts down-regulating that. And then it will start down-regulating the oncogenes as well, and cancer will start subsiding. I mean, this is what metabolic water DDW25 that's used as a veterinary supplement for cancer in dogs does. It does exactly this. As I said, treat me as a fucking dog, as a poodle if I get cancer, So it does have its place, these sort of whether it's a fat bomb or whatever. But if somebody's trying to lose weight, definitely not. Not a good idea. Because basically, if you're getting excess calories, you're not going to burn your own. The body's saying, "Oh, we got plenty coming in." it'll just increase slightly your metabolic rate, but it's not going to basically start burning away massive amounts of fat. You need to basically reduce some of those things. And in nature, people wouldn't eat this. They come across, they'd have a big animal, they'd eat it, then they could go for days without a lot of food or small amounts of starvation foods in between. This, they didn't have a supermarket to go to. So there are reasons. And so you don't want to be doing this sort of stuff. People just do crazy things. There are reasons for them, and they're not for everyone. And depending on what you're trying to achieve as well. Yeah. Thanks, mate, for pointing that out. Oops. And we'll go down to the Pete stuff. Was funny going with the R2, and I think the pills over into his approach of biology somewhat. Oh, look, the whole idea is I did a video with Pim Johnson, the first one that I did, and I actually covered on some of like Kempner's sort of ideas on using high sugar, very low, like 2% fat, 4% protein, and 94% carbohydrate. But this was for a specific therapeutic, and because insulin is very high under those sort of conditions, you've got to get rid of all the electrolytes, because you end up with you can't take sodium or any of the other, because you end up with water retention, shitloads of water retention as a consequence. So the only supplementation that he actually had was iron. And that was basically to fix a certain rare type of kidney disease. That was the only thing. And it worked. These people lost weight and their kidney functions improved. Nowadays, we know that a keto diet will do exactly the same thing. So you don't need to do this. But at the time, they didn't. This was pre-Randall, because remember, Randall's cycle was about, Philip Randall, we're talking about 53, I believe. This was in the 30s that this protocol was developed. These people harper back to that and they go, oh, look, it worked. You lose weight, you do this. Yeah, it's the vegan diet. It's a catabolic diet, poor nutrition. Even Kempner understood that you couldn't do it long term. It was a short-term intervention. This was pre-Randall. But then you basically have to reintroduce meat, reintroduce other foods, because you'll end up nutrient deficient, which will create a whole lot of other health problems, which we see in the modern world. Or we see with Ray Pete and his degeneration. He won't even come front up. I've got, Danny, and I've gone to other things like that where Ray Pete pops up, and I've put comments in the past. And I even tried to get a challenge between him and Bart, or even me. But, the guy only comes on to Danny's and a few others, and even Danny won't, because he ignores me completely. But when Bart goes, I actually contacted Bart once, and I said, get on there and actually challenge him to and I kept on putting comments, come on, we want a debate here, or challenging him, and bring him on and stuff like that. And then he just basically ignored me completely, all my comments, and also ignored, Bart made a whole lot of excuses. Oh, it's not practical. I can't do it now. It's, and stuff like that. Bullshit. He just mouthpieces the same garbage over and over again. I've heard it so many times. It's just, a joke, or his Russian mate that turns up, what's his bloody name? I forget his name now. Giorgio or whatever. Starts with a D, surname. And this guy goes, oh, you need to do all this. He's got receding hairline. He's losing his hair. He's balding. And he's got other issues and all that. And he goes, oh, this is perfect for the thyroid and perfect for this and all that. I'm going, it doesn't seem to be working for you, mate. You know what I mean? So it's just crap that these guys keep on talking about in that regard. So yeah, it's sort of funny. It's funny as in that, the sort of things that they get up to. But, as I said, this intervention does work. If you apply it as a short-term intervention, it does work. And I can't say it doesn't, because you're not engaging the Randall cycle. That's the whole thing. But ultimately, you end up where all vegans end up. You end up basically emaciated, falling apart, and with a lot of other health problems. So it's not a practical solution. And, so that is the traditional high sugar, low. It's the same thing that Durian Rider does. Very similar. That's what he does. And that's why he has to consume so much sugar to prevent, muscle loss. And even there, he can't stop it. And so what has Harley been doing? He did roids. He admitted it. Remember on these debate with Bart, he admitted that he actually took roids because he could not stop the catabolism. And then you've got the modern day vegans who are on what I call on junk food 2.0. So they're basically eating a whole lot of seed oils and a whole lot of sugar combined. They're getting fat because they're engaging the Randall cycle. They're eating too many mixed macros and, affecting, insulin resistance at the cell level. And that's all they're doing. And so they're basically fucking themselves up. And so you've got the catabolic, freely style, shitloads of sugar or fruit, all that, fruitarians. And then you've got the other crazies on the other side. Sorry, not the non-crazies on the other side, fattening up on a Randall cycle style, on a sad vegan diet. Because that, all these fake meats and all that, it's a sad vegan diet. It combines sugar and rancid seed oils. That's what it does. So it's even worse than the other catabolic one. The other catabolic one, if you do it for too long, it's a problem. But if you do it for a short amount, you can get some benefits. Limited, but some, like weight loss and a few other things like that. But, God. You're welcome, mate. No, ice cream. Yeah, you mean ice cream. Where? Obviously, a tub and a spoon. Do it properly. If you're going to cheat. Hey, I know how to cheat, like the best of yous. Oh, what? Hold on. What did Bo? I knew Harry wouldn't just read and comprehend my comments. Always does it. I bloody knew it. Yeah, I'll probably do it. Yeah, I sort of go on a rant. Can't help myself. You know that. You got to live with me. I've got an erratic mind. I can't help myself. What's the other one? Dear Harry, I said, I no longer make. Oh, you no longer. Oh, sorry. Okay. Why not? My ice cream making days are over. Fair enough. My freezer died. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yes. I do apologise. I didn't pick up correctly. Yes. I sort of rant and go on, pick up on a couple of words and move on, trying to get through my long list. Because of my rants, it ends up becoming longer, as you know. Okay, considering on a carnivore diet needs for nutrition like thiamine go down, do any nutrients go up? Riboflavin in some people, very much, especially with me with my genetics. But in most people, riboflavin does go slightly up, the requirement, but you do get plenty from animal foods. So that's one to look at. Yeah, that's probably the only real biggie in that regard. Choline is probably another one for some people, depending on their genetics. It can vary. But if you're eating eggs and a bit of liver now and then, you're probably fine. Especially most people just need a couple of eggs a day or 2 eggs a day or even 1 egg. They're fine. They get, because you still get some choline in meat. Combine it with a bit, but for the same grams, egg is substantially more. So, yeah. But riboflavin would be the big one in terms of a more carnivorous diet, where thiamine actually drops to half. And if you're actually having bacon and eggs in the morning, as an example, you will get nearly 100% of the RDI. So you get double the amount that you need just from the bacon, let alone all the other foods. So thiamine becomes a non-issue on a carnivore diet, but riboflavin, depending, especially if people are basically being like doing long-term fasts and stuff like that, or, caloric deficits and stuff like that, they can become slightly deficient in riboflavin. So you need to keep an eye on that in that regard. And if people are doing, what else? Probably the fasting would be the big one. Yeah, I would say you'd probably have to look at certain foods that were higher in riboflavin to put them back in. And as going into a fast, I would try and get higher amounts of riboflavin in as I'm going into a fast. So that's what I do. And I notice that it's actually, I cruise through it. I'm going to do 3-day fast and I just cruise through it. And it doesn't feel like there's this sort of blip thing. It just sort of like static, food, fasting, food. So I think the extra riboflavin seems to do the trick in that regard and helping with energy production. So I think it's, because remember you will store water-soluble vitamins for a couple of days, up to 3 or even longer, depending on which water-soluble vitamin it is. So I will always have a bit more riboflavin going in, and I usually get it from raw milk. And the good thing about that is also that's going to push slightly the amount, slightly push up my metabolic rate as well. And then as I go into it, it will stay up. And up to 3 days, it's after 3 days that it starts dropping off a bit, but it doesn't drop off a lot. But then I'll hit it with new food. So it's been a long time since I've done a 6-day fast, which was my longest. The majority of them are, 24-hour, 48-hour, and 70 or 80 hours. The last one, I think, was 80. Can't remember. It was either 81 or 82. I can't remember exactly how many hours, but it was over 80. But it was at that low part, but not exactly. Won't come to me. I'm trying to think about it. Well, you got your reply. Yes, he loves his alcohol. Yeah, probably. We all have our confusing moments, Dr. Bird. Let me guess. Harry doesn't know about Dr. Greta. Yeah, I do. That's why I mentioned it earlier, that everybody's become a doctor. And that's why I said earlier, you may have missed it, I said that I'm Professor, and then somebody called me Mad Professor Harry from Tassie. Fair enough, I'll take that. Yeah, too many of yous coming out of the woodworks. If you're exercising regularly and not exceeding calorie, does the Randall cycle affect you? No, is a simple word. If you're not getting over the excess and all that, and you've got a deficit, nope, will not happen. So the Randall cycle only is when there are excess calories, and in particular when they're coming from mixed macros like sugar and fat at the same time. that's what really tends to make that worse, because it's also the insulin side that is going to be much higher and attenuates the actual effect of the Randall cycle. Is there more of a problem when you're metabolically unhealthy and over-consuming calories? Yep. I'll give you an example. When chylomicrons bring in fat from your intestines, they leave the intestinal wall every 10 minutes, head for the thoracic duct, and then permeate through the body until there's a remnant, chylomicron remnant, that goes back to the liver. And depending on its resident time, the chylomicron resident depends on the ApoE, that it gets from the HDL receptor, so the key. So whether it's allowed in earlier or not, the resident time. Now, if you're deranged, metabolically deranged, it could take up to stay in circulation up to 6 hours because of resistance, of insulin resistance. And also when you're in a state of insulin resistance, you've also got downregulation of HDL as well. So you end up with all this fat coming in, not enough receptors to clear it out of the system, so it ends up in resident time far longer, also being glycated and everything else under the sun. So yeah, there is a fundamental difference between those sort of two. So if you want to reduce the derangement, you basically have to clean up your diet. Simple as that, really just clean things up. Sort of quick cleanups can actually happen with things like if you do certain fasts, you really go zero carb for a couple of days, up your fat, go zero carb. So because you need the energy, it has to come from somewhere, because until your body actually starts releasing free fatty acid from the adipose tissue, starts utilizing gluconeogenesis better and stuff like that, you're going to be in a sort of a state where you're going to be feeling like shit, just lethargic, not enough energy and stuff like that. So, you up your fat at that point, your carbs go to zero, more or less, and either that or fasting can actually then make you insulin sensitive, bring things out of that derangement. And it depends on how damaged you are. Some people it takes longer, some people it takes shorter. If you're coming from diabetes, as an example, it could take a number of months. If you're pre-diabetes, it still could take a while. So it could take some time. Depends on what state of affairs. I mean, for me, it was a very smooth transition because I was just consuming a lot of seed oils that were damaging my body and gave me cardiovascular disease. But I wasn't, like a heavy sugar eater or any of this sort of stuff, or eating too much garbage. So, I was just doing, I thought, the healthy thing by cooking everything in seed oils, because that would lower the LDL and all that nonsense. And all I did is damage my arteries. But I wasn't doing all these other, high amounts of, really refined crap like a lot of people are doing nowadays in particular. And so their derangement maybe, or anyone's derangement on an ultra sad diet, can take much longer, a couple of months, to basically, for the body to start working properly again. So it depends on your circumstances. So really where your starting point is, what your state is, and all that is, if you really want to know, send me an email, give me some details, and then I can sort of give you a bit of an idea, what to do in that regard. So, let me just find my email, and I'll just put it up there. So I just have to log in. That's the Proton Mail one. So I'll just find it and I'll actually put it in the actual, so people can. You can get it in the about stuff, but anyway, I will put it there. Where is it? Yeah. That's the email. So if people want to get to me about, or sort of ask some questions, or to help themselves out in that regard. Some other comment. Let me just. Where did I put it? Anyway, yeah, getting back to it. Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yep. Okay. I know Luke perked up as you up at the mention of thyroid. Yep. Well, I do have a protocol on it. Yeah, and it's if people want that protocol, that information, just send me. It basically includes how much iodine, how much selenium, how much a number of the nutrients you need and stuff like that, how much, eating properly in terms of protein, in terms of the sodium and phosphorus in there, which basically puts you in that sweet point of where you need to be. You could either be, whether you're hyper or hypo, that can be an area where you're either creating brittle bones or you're basically breaking down bone. You're very catabolic, so you want to be in the sweet spot. Selenium plays a big role. People are very deficient in selenium. It's really important. Selenium also suppresses the reverse T3. So you get less reverse of T3 with selenium. Well, what foods are high in selenium? Eggs. Things like, well, all animal foods are high, but in particular eggs and liver. And so selenium plays a big role in suppressing reverse T3. So we get bagged about reverse T3 continuously from some of the idiots out there. Don't understand. But if you're not eating a species appropriate diet in the way ancestrally people would eat, nose to tail and a number of other things, you probably may be deficient in some of these things. And as a consequence, especially when you're transitioning between these sort of diets, that can create a number of issues and imbalances and stuff like that. So it depends, in that regard. But I always say, people, the key nutrient that actually does the conversion. I mean, yes, zinc plays a minor role in conversion of, your T4 to T3, but selenium is the big player. So iodine and selenium are the big players, but also some of the other things as well, And also, as I said, selenium plays an important role in preventing, high levels of reverse T3 as well. So you end up in a much more sweeter spot as far as your hormones are, whether you're on a keto diet, carnivore diet, or whatever else. So nutrients play a big role, because we see these thyroid diseases across a lot of different dietary practices, and it's basically deficiencies in these key micronutrients. That's what it is, People are just doing very narrow, limited type dietary interventions. And sometimes people say, oh, well, I've been doing it like this for 10 years. Yeah, fine. If you've been doing it 10 years, there could be other factors. You could have been quite heavy, and you could have stored a lot of things in your adipose tissue. And as you're basically losing weight and losing weight and losing weight, you're releasing a lot of fat-soluble vitamins. A lot of things are being released from tissue and becoming available. And so, yeah, you're not being deficient, but at some point you may become. So there is a certain level of requirements. And when you get those sort of requirements, generally, and there are transitional levels, which is a completely different thing. When your weight's stable and everything's sort of flowing the way it should be, there are specific food combinations that are required to maintain that good level of micronutrient homeostasis and micronutrient requirements for a number of, because they do, all these things are cofactors in a number of enzymatic processes. So those enzymes that your body's creating to do a whole lot of, they're transcripted, and they are little machines that go around doing a lot of repair and fixing up and changing and breaking down things and putting them together and breaking down food. All these enzymes play an important role. Clean up tissue. Where there's scar tissue, they'll clean it up. They do all these things, but they need cofactors, and we call them vitamins and minerals. And depending on the diet that you're on and how inflammatory it is one thing, but also what state are you in? You may be coming to the carnivore diet in a very inflamed state. Your micronutrient requirements are going to be much harder than somebody who's been on a carnivore diet or a low carb diet or whatever for a length of period of time. So there is going to be completely difference, and this sort of one size fits all doesn't work. This is why a lot of people complain. They go, God, I've been trying this and I still feel like crap. I've got these issues. I've got those issues. It's because your circumstances are different. Your genes are different. Your ancestry is different. This is why I ask people, what's your ancestry? Usually when people tell me their ancestry, I go, okay, include these and these foods in your diet. And usually they'll come back to me with an email, within a week, and they'll go, fuck, I feel much better. Because, they're following somebody else's carnivore approach that may work for that person, but they're ignoring their own ancestral sort of circumstances. I mean, I'm a half decent converter of beta carotenes or some of the carotenoids you find in like red meat. But some people are very poor converters. So you may need other sources of retinol, direct retinol. So liver, as an example, or eggs, as an example, because you just can't get enough from muscle meat. So they're going to be and especially if you come from the British Isles, especially Ireland in particular, the levels of, conversion of carotenoids to retinol is extremely low. This is why most people that have got an Irish ancestry and become vegans, their skin goes orangey because they can't convert those friggin' carotenoids, So, yeah, maybe that's what causes the sort of the orange hair as well. Just kidding. Yes. So, yeah, those things need to be balanced. They need to be done properly. And you need to know where your starting point is and what your end point is at the same time. Has already expressed he doesn't want the title doctor. Yep, exactly. Yes, I'm just basically a regular dude who's done a lot of research, had health problems, did a lot of research, and realized that there was a lot of nonsense out there that was being peddled because certain people had an interest in peddling it to make profits off the misery of others. What are your thoughts on providine iodine topical application and iodine absorption? Don't know enough about it. I've heard about it, that it does absorb in a half decent way. but I've never used it, and I've never tested, and I don't know of any research. So I would have to look at research to see exactly what is the absorption rate within human skin. And since I don't have any research on that, I can't really comment on that. But if you do have anything, send it to me. I'm always interested, and that would help. For someone with osteoporosis and not eating carnivore, what would you recommend the best nutritions to add and the most important to reduce? Let's put it this way. Refined oils and sugars would be the main thing that I would get rid of our diet. But also protein is very important. For osteoporosis, your muscles and your bones are made largely of protein. Okay? Now, the bones that have got this collagen type protein, when you're a little kid, your legs really bend like that. Why? Because all the collagen just bends like that. And that's what they get, the N15 isotope analysis. It's from that collagen of the bone collagen. Anyway, when you get older, you're actually just putting minerals. You're storing minerals there. And that minerals give it rigidity. So it's not the mineral loss. It's actually the bone structure falling apart that actually plays the biggest role. I know a lot of people here out there that basically, high phosphorus will leach out calcium out of the bones. And it's, so high meat diets and stuff like that cause this problem. Bullshit. It's crap. It's nonsense. There's no science for it. It's absolutely crap, or high acidity and stuff like that will cause. No, that's what you've got your kidneys, your lungs and all that to get rid of, to balance the pHs. Nah. So what have the studies? This week I'll be doing the study and showing exactly what combinations of things. And I can tell you, I'll give you one hint away. If you reduce phosphorus, you start losing bone. When you increase phosphorus and a couple of other things, you start increasing bone density. And this is in a pure clinical study where they literally infused and changed the combination of things. You can't get better than that. That's gold-plated. It's a clinical study. That's not free living. That literally just tears that whole myth about phosphorus and animal products. It just blows it out of the water because it's a myth. There are other minerals that help, and I've talked about them. Boron helps in mineralization. MK4 helps in mineralization. But there are 3 components that play a role in that. And it'll be in the video that I'll be making. And you'll be surprised. The simple components and basically the 3 things that have been demonized to cause this problem, and they are the things that actually prevent the problem. It's crazy. And there's good science. But we've had nonsense on LDL and all these other things. So, yes, stay tuned and keep an eye on my releases this week, because they will be touching on both these issues, because I'm sick and tired of all the bullshit out there, and somebody needs to basically answer these nonsensical arguments. So then you guys have got a video clip, and you can take it and post it anywhere and say, no, you're talking shit. Check this out. This is real science that just blows all their arguments out of the water. And we need these arguments because it's time that we dealt with them properly. Do you try and consume? Definitely not. MK4 only. That's the animal form. About a third of the population can't even convert MK7. You're throwing away your money. So it depends how much. If you're basically healthy and all that, you can get enough from animal foods. MK4. You can get enough from brie, which is 100% MK4. Emu oil, if you're into that sort of stuff. Exotic. Most dairy is very high in MK4. Gouda as a cheese and brie are some of the highest. Liver, great source. Eggs, MK4. So you can have a bit of liver, get MK4. You can have a bit of some eggs every day. You can get MK4. So there's a lot of foods that have MK4. Higher doses are only for specific protocols. Let's say you want to decalcify your arteries. In a low inflammatory state, first I would put you dietary into a low inflammatory state. Then I would get you to go to your GP and test that your C-reactive protein, that your inflammation is much lower. And once I know that, then I would put you on a high dose MK4 protocol to literally rip all the calcium out of the soft tissue and put it into the bones where it belongs. And in some other areas, your teeth and other areas. And most people, when they do high MK4, in a low inflammatory state, they even see the tartar in their teeth going away in days. They are shocked how their oral health improves, not only their bone health. So yeah, MK4 is the magic stuff. It's the animal stuff. It's the stuff that our bodies use and suck up like there is no tomorrow. I think it's nearly impossible to overdose on MK4. MK7 is a different thing. And it can become a pro-inflammatory thing if it's circulating for too long. So in high doses and circulating too long, not a good thing because it can't be converted in most people or gets poorly converted. So MK4 is the animal form, and that's what you want. And you only supplement for specific conditions like cardiovascular, calcification, like kidney stones, other things like that you may have from past dietary indiscretions that created those problems. So it depends on the circumstances, and the dosages will depend on that as well. So if you've got any issues, drop me a line, and I will give you a few pointers on dosages and stuff like that. I'd have to agree. You boys, bloody hell, bring the worst out in me. God, I'm going to get myself into trouble if I say any more. Okay, would you be able to explain the synergies between fat-soluble vitamins, how it works and why it's important and all that? Look, I'll give you an example for osteocalcin and, for the proteins that are involved in bones. Retinol and vitamin D are required to basically provide the signaling and also the material to basically get the body to transcript these proteins that are involved in the bone remodeling. Also, there is another class of enzymes that I've spoken about for a long time, which are called MMPs, matrix metalloproteinases. These are collagen degrading enzymes. So that's the collagen part. So all your structures of your body has collagen all over it. What are regulating those? Again, to a lesser extent MK4, but to some extent. But it's primarily retinol, the big player. And in some areas, especially in the lungs and a few other areas, it's vitamin D. Another reason why vitamin D is so protective from respiratory infections that cause lung damage or the collagen in your lungs. And, vitamin D helps with that. So you've got the collagen side, and then you've got the mineralization, the building of the mineral structures within that collagen, which is these osteocalcin type enzymes. So they're working synergistically. So those sort of enzymes, the osteocalcin ones, are basically you require vitamin retinol and vitamin D, and basically the activated form, obviously. And MK4 is a player in that scenario. Once these ones are being transcripted, they need then to be activated, and that's where vitamin K2 does the activation. So that's its role, but that's one of its roles. I mean, it has a role in your liver in biosynthesis. So choline plays a role, but also MK4 plays a role. There's certain enzymes that actually clear out issues within the liver, and also help with moving stuff in and out of, clearing stuff out of the liver and detoxing and stuff like that. And there again, MK4 plays a role. And also, choline also plays a role. Plus, with the actual, Luke's got a few video clips for me, I noticed. Let me just get these already. Let's have a few laughs, guys. I'll just finish on this. So they do work together in a number of different biological functions, and it would take a long explanation to explain every single biological function, but they do play big roles. But they're big players. What is your body built mostly of? Your skin, collagen. So the big game is the collagen degrading enzymes and the regulation of these. That means the turnover that happens in your bones, your skin, your nails, all these sort of things. This is where they're playing a big role. They do play out in other areas in terms of, like, vitamin D plays a big role in macrophage regulation, in T cells, because it's got 4 receptors. So in the immune part, in the immune function in that regard. So, but the big synergistic role, because the other ones are minor players in the immune system, it's really vitamin D, but you're talking about synergies. Synergies is really at the fundamental part of synergy, I would say, would be these collagen degrading enzymes, these matrix metalloproteinases and their regulation. And the osteocalcin ones as well, for the bone side of things, requires all 3 to work together. So that is where synergy is happening, in those 2 main parts of the body: your bone mineralization and the collagen throughout your whole body, your skin, your nails, everywhere, because we're made of protein and fats, so that's where you'd be looking at. And so that would be without going to specific little niche areas where there is some synergy that takes place. Okay, now let me turn that off and share the screen. People abuse honey when bodybuilding. And the other one, let's check the other one out. When people ask me, where did I learn all this unusual stuff about nutrition and health? Harry's channel. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Yes, I have a very novel way of viewing things, because I look at the literature, guys. I actually look at the science, and when I look at the science, I see these paradoxes. So when people put arguments forward, I go, well, where's your science? You don't have any science. I mean, if we're looking at any, like even diet, we've got no science on diet, and Bart's completely right. We've got no absolute zero science, because we would have to lock up twins in the clinical wards and feed them a specific diet for the moment they're born until their death, and say, for the lifetime of this person, this diet allowed this twin to live longer than that twin. We can't do that. Wouldn't pass an ethics committee. You'd never get it done. All we've got is studies that actually show that for 1 year or less, a couple of months in many cases, majority of cases, because they're cheap, they're too expensive to do for multiple years. And then there are a very tiny amount of clinical or randomized control studies. So RCTs, which is randomized clinical trials, or randomized control studies, RCSs. There's very limited amount of those. They cost a lot of money to do, especially over a long period of time. But they are the best controlled in most cases. As long as they're done really well, you can control for a lot of factors to get rid of confounding factors. But again, they are for a limited time. You can say, well, this study showed over a year, if you did this, you would get these results. If you did this, you would get that result. But that's only 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, or like the direct study out of Israel, which actually had a follow-up over 5 years. And so you could say for 5 years, if you do an Atkins diet, you will have the best results. And the second best results will be from the Mediterranean diet, a high-fat version of the Mediterranean diet, because the Israelis did a different version from the standard one that they do in the US. That's a very important point, because it was 50% fat. It wasn't basically a Mediterranean diet that they do in the US, which is something like 30% fat. Very different results and more carbohydrates. So then you've got the actual other study that was done by Christopher Gartner out of Stanford University. That was done over a year. So if you actually type in on the Stanford University website, or go to the YouTube, the Stanford University, put Stanford, and then the Battle of the Diets, because that's what they called it, the Battle of the Diets. That was the A to Z study. So A standing for Atkins, Z standing for zone diet. And they had basically 4 dietary approaches: the zone, the Atkins diet, the Learn diet, which is the official dietary approach, and the last one, which was basically the Ornish diet, which is the plant-based diet. They did that for a year. Now, the compliance was very good in the first 6 months, and then it sort of dropped off a bit. But it was still basically, they stuck to the book. They actually taught them the original book, which is good. This is not the new Atkins diet, which is put out from Duke University, which is the one the low carb community promotes. And that was the one that was done by Eric Westman and a few others. This was the original Atkins book from Dr. Atkins. And it was basically, and the same thing with the Israeli study, it was the original Atkins book, which is basically, bacon and eggs and cream and all this sort of stuff. High fat, high animal proteins and stuff like that. Not a lot of veggies in the original Atkins one. And the results were that basically not only the highest weight loss, but also inflammatory biomarkers. Because they went back after they did the study, because it was a weight loss study, and they looked at all the other, like inflammation, C-reactive protein, all these other things, the lipid profile and all that. And on the actual video that Christopher goes through, he talks a bit of shit. He goes, "Oh, it could have been this factor. It could have been the olive oil." He talks crap, because this is traditional veg-tarted stuff. He got a lot of flack from Ornish in particular over this, study that he did. And now he's gone back to his garlic studies and a whole lot of other nonsense studies, because he won't do these big nutritional ones. He says, "I can't get the funding." Bullshit, Christopher. No, you don't want to get the same result and confirm for a second time that the Atkins diet is superior to all other diets, at least over a year period of time. So he actually did the study, and actually people in the audience ask him, say, "Well, what about this? What about that? Inflammation and this?" And it goes, it all got better on the Atkins diet. He had to admit, but he said he's not, for ethical reasons, he's not going to change his lifestyle. He's going to remain plant-based. But on all these, like inflammatory biomarkers, on health markers and all that, over a year, These people did much better. It was women that was actually in this trial group that were involved. I think they were postmenopausal. I can't remember exactly now. It's been a while. This was years and years ago that I actually saw this. So it's been around for quite a few, but not many people know about it. And sort of, I'll actually find it now. Just give me a sec. Here it is. That's the point where he actually. So that is it. That's actually at the point where he's actually going through, where he's actually looking at the actual study itself and looking at the results between the different diets at that point there. So people can look at that and make their own opinions. But basically, he's a plant-based academic, and he actually admits that he's a bit biased, So at least he had the decency to say that when he went into it, he was a bit biased. And they actually put the Atkins component in there because they wanted to prove it bad, that it was bad. But they actually proved the opposite. Same thing happened with the Israeli study, the direct study. That was even better done because they actually supplied some of the food over that period of time that the actual study was done. So it was actually much better done in the compliance and all that. And they got great results. So we do have some studies in terms of, but they are, as again, the Stanford study, 1 year, the direct study out of Israel was for 2 years and a 5-year follow-up. So we can say for 5 years, the Atkins diet, a high animal fat-based diet, does better than all the other diets. But that's all we can say. That's the only science we've got. The only other things that we can go on is the N15 isotope analysis. So the collagen of bones of ancestral Homo sapiens for the last 350,000 years, or the last couple of million years of hominins and their bones. And when we look at those sort of things, we find quite clearly that they were super and hyper carnivores for most of that period of time. So if you've got your genes have been designed and your genes have evolved over the last 3 million years to eat a high animal-based diet. That's what they're designed for. How could that diet cause you health problems? Just think, it does not make logical sense. Especially, in that bone structure, the N15 isotope analysis is irrefutable. There is no argument. This is pure data. That is what pure science is. Pure data. It's like measuring the speed of light. Nobody can dispute it. It is pure data. You've measured the speed of light. Nobody can say the speed of light is different than what is being measured by every single academic on this planet in the physics world. Same thing. These archaeologists have looked at bones of collagen of bones in a whole lot of different areas on the planet, and they found similar results. It's irrefutable. The problem is nutritionists don't look at, they're run by religious crackpot organizations like the Seventh-day Adventists and are promoting pseudoscience and have and have infiltrated large parts of the actual academia, in specifically the nutritional field, and promoting this nonsense. That's what we've got to contest with. But the reality is, when you look at archaeological evidence, the archaeological evidence is quite emphatic. It's quite clear. The N15 isotope data does not lie. It is baked in the bones. It's basically as good as the speed of light. It's basically irrefutable that we were super and hyper carnivores for most of our existence as hominins and as Homo sapiens. Period. Slam dunk. There's no argument here. That is baked in the bones as far as I'm concerned. And that's quite clear with the science. And we have to be quite clear about these things and nail this bugger. So yes. Anyway, now moving on and on and on and on. So I'm going to have to go soon, which is the biggest problem, but I'm just going to really go through just quickly. Any thoughts on benefits wanting to lower? No, definitely not. Ignore. Let the body work out where the appropriate LDL should be. If you've got an ApoE44, you'll have higher LDL because you're uptaking much quicker the remnant chylomicron. That's why. And so you will have more circulating VLDL. Simple as that. So don't worry about it. If you've got an ApoE of 2.2, you'll have naturally, even if you eat shitloads of fat, you'll still have a lower LDL because the uptake through the receptor is much slower. So if you're a hyper-responder, like, Dave Feldman is and all that, because he's a 4.3, who gives a shit? You're a hyper-responder, You're designed to basically take in fats very quickly into the liver because you evolved with the ancestral genes of that sort that had zero sugar for thousands and thousands of years, and then we included a bit as the mega beast started declining. We started including a bit here and there. This was not agriculture. Go and check the other video that I did, the ApoE with Pim, and I explained it there. So yeah, so non-issue, don't worry. And all this about atherogenic and all that, unless you're eating seed oils and sugar to damage the lipids will not. Remember, they got a pericellular matrix, a hairline structure. If you're eating animal foods, you're getting more, the sort of sulfur amino acids. That sulfonation that happens on the glycocalyx, on the sugar molecules that are at the tip of the pericellular matrix, those hairline structures around the LDL, around your arteries, around viruses and bacteria and all that, they can't stick. Okay, as long as you earth yourself now and then and you maintain a good negative charge, they cannot stick. You can't get atherosclerosis even in a highly inflamed from parasites. It will not happen because there's no stickiness. It's only when you put sugar in there or you put these dangerous lipids that actually oxidize and damage these cell membranes, and then they become dysfunctional. And then they start sticking, and then they do all sorts of things. The advanced glycation end products and stuff like that. It's the diet, guys. Fix the diet. All these things go away magically. Not magically, but, they go away. It looks like magic, but it's really just working with the physiology of the body in that regard. So let me quickly go through a couple of these. I'll just get the key ones, and because then I have to go because Dad will be waiting with my food. So if I've missed anybody, yeah, don't bother. Just take in whatever you need from the diet, and do not worry whatsoever. Your body will regulate that properly. So do not supplement calcium. It does not increase your mineral density. Your body will take in whatever it needs. I'll be explaining this week some of this sort of stuff. So wait and be prepared. Tryptophan, you don't need any. Just get it from whatever the diet. As long as you're getting it from the diet, your body will get the appropriate homeostasis. Yeah, look, if you're not intolerant, don't worry. You'll be fine. Dairy will not cause problems. And let me. What was this? Interesting about tryptophan promo effects. Yep. Okay. That was a comment previously. Ask me again next week and I can go into a bit more. Yeah. Overhyped a lot of this sort of stuff. It's all this reductionist nonsense. We need some, but we don't need the massive amounts that some people think. It's just crazy. It causes imbalances. Just eat proper food, guys. Don't listen to the crackpots out there that are trying to sell something or, bullshit. Yes, I need a bit of voyeurism now and then. Believe me. Spice of life. Yeah, as I'm moving through this. Sorry, I'm moving quite clearly. And Harry, a few on Bart, Discord, delving into red light therapy. Yep. Look, yes and no. Red light therapy can be a problem for some people. If they've got mitochondrial damage, it can actually make it worse. So you got to know what your state is. So it's not a panacea. You got to fix the mitochondria first, and then you can apply red light therapy. So keep that in mind. It can be a problem if you do it the wrong way. It can make things worse. G'day, Kate. I wish I could. Yes, he's a young whippersnipper. He's on the rise, even within our community, which is good. We need younger people with open minds. I've had recently a contact from a young person who's just coming out, has been studying nutrition and all that, and I've shot him some stuff, and he says, we were never taught this stuff, and it just contradicts. It's good science. It contradicts completely what. So he wants me as a mentor, but I just don't have the time. But I will push him a bit of information here and there just to help him out. We need to get some people with the knowledge to be able to help the community in the long run. Okay. Let me go down quickly. What was this? Duke wants $6,000 for their low carb program. Eric and Westman, others showed over 30% weight loss. Yep. Look, exactly. Eric does good research. Don't get me wrong, but their New Atkins diet has a lot of veggies in and stuff like that, which I think is unnecessary. That's where my difference is. But they do some really good science, and we need all the science we can get to just to help us on this path. Yeah, Gary Taubes is pretty good as well. Oops. What's this? Interesting. How do you orthodox faith and evolution get together? It gets fine with me. My sort of view in terms of, evolution, I always remind some of the orthodox people that, I don't believe in social Darwinism. That's just nonsense, garbage. But I believe that basically what lies beyond space-time basically brought about this realm. Why does God give us free will? Because he doesn't interfere in this realm. And if he comes in to influence, not interfere, but influence, like Christ, he comes in human form, within the material form, within this realm. See the difference? Comes in a material form. And so, evolution is not incompatible, because it's just basically the mathematical architecture that this deity actually created to basically unfold the universe in a certain way. The anthropic principle that Bart also agrees with, and I do as well, seems to we seem to be in a universe that actually allows the creation of humans, the bringing about of intelligent, sentient, thinking minds that can actually contemplate God. So, a lot of other nonsense stuff has come out there with string theory and all that, and saying about parallel universes. There's got to be other universes. This is just the accidental. There's got to be other universes that don't have any life or don't have this or that, to be able to explain all these other things, to explain away the anthropic principle. But they haven't been able to, because they've never had zero experimental proof. And even some of the recent stuff out of CERN actually blew a big fucking hole into their anus for those people doing the M theory and all the other nonsense from the evolved string pseudo scientists, and basically their stuff has been proven to be wrong on a number of issues, and now they're trying to modify their theory. If something's wrong, it was wrong from the beginning. It was crap, and you had no real empirical truth or experimental truth. And all the experimental truth, the recent stuff, and also the stuff with black holes and some of the actual experimental work, is even causing more damage to those models. Because this is another thing. This is remember, you've got the empiricist approach in science, and you've got the rationalist approach. Models, string theory and all that. These are all mathematical models and all that. They're concoctions. They're not observable truth or experimental. They're concoctions. So that's shit, So I have no problems with incompatibility with my faith in that regard. There are some people in my faith that basically sometimes forget the important thing that was said, that to that which is Caesar's is Caesar's, and to that which is God's is God's. That basically our faith isn't a faith involved in, science or involved in that. This is why the Greek religious leaders never really, they sort of basically said, well, we don't know. It's sort of, we don't support this necessarily, but we don't really know. It could be or could not be. There's a lot of grayness there. It's only the Catholics and others that have took a really strong position on these things. The Pope, the earth is flat, or the Pope, or not the flat. Sorry, not that, but the earth is at the center of the universe. So they took a more strident position on these things, where the Orthodox are a bit more flexible. They keep science and keep the human life and the human endeavor as separate from faith, and the focus is really on moving away from darkness, this fallen realm which we're in, moving away from darkness towards the light, to becoming more God-like, not with his powers, but God-like in his behavior and stuff like that. So that's where the focus is. It's a spiritual, mysticist type, trying to become more like what exists in that metaphysical realm beyond space-time. It's less of an interest in the space-time world, in this material world of fallen. Because remember, Lazarus was resurrected in material form. So we're not against materialism within this realm. We consider this realm a material realm, which is separate from that world which exists beyond space-time. So we believe God created a material world that we live in our fallen state, whatever you want to call it. And, and if we're basically able to move closer to the light and become better versions of ourselves, then we've got the possibility of basically being saved, in a sense. So it's a very different way, where the Eastern Orthodox is very different. Sometimes I hear some people that have converted to Eastern Orthodoxy who come from a Protestant or that, and bring some of their baggage with them, and they start using some of the terms, and I go, well, that's not really Orthodox, so I have issues with those people. But look, there are some religious leaders that were against evolution, and others that just basically said we don't know. So there are disagreements and views on this within. The difference is that each bishop within the Greek Orthodox faith is independent. We don't have a pope. They are basically autokephaly, as it's called, which is, independently headed, in a sense. That's how all the bishops were from the beginning. They would come together in a holy synod, which is basically what a democracy is, because the word ecclesia, which is church, comes from the ancient Greek word of assembly, which is the old democracy assembly, sort of the faithful in this case. So it's a very different way we view a lot of this sort of stuff. It would take a long time to explain everything and my thoughts on it, but yeah, believe me, I can live very comfortably between both worlds in my own head. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. So you got a bit of a bit of an angle of my thinking in that regard. So yeah, and so within the material world, has been created for us, it runs on certain laws. It's governed by certain laws, and when we unravel those laws and understand it, we understand the creation itself that's been created for us. If that makes sense, that's how I view it. Others will view it in a much more simplistic way, in a different way, but that's for them to, but that's how I view it. And I can be a person of faith and a person who's comfortable with science as well, completely. So, guys, I better go because Dad's going to be waiting for me. So it takes a while to get over there. So need to put trousers on as well. Can't walk out the way I am at the moment. And yes, so I will see some of you people, lovely people, tonight at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and a few other people that are heading to bed who are in the North American continent and heading to bed at this time. I will see you next week. Take care. Be nice to each other. Helpful, because we're all, as humans, we need each other, and we do better when we help each other. Anyway, take care, guys. Look after yourselves, and we'll chat with some of you later on and the rest next week. See yous.